January 1941. Paris, France. The quiet hum of the sewing machine filled the small room, a rhythmic sound that could have been mistaken for peace. But Marie knew better. The world outside was crumbling. The German troops had occupied Paris months ago, and the once vibrant streets had grown cold and silent, as though the city itself had lost its soul. Yet inside the walls of her modest shop, there was a fragile sense of normality. The smell of fabric and thread, the occasional clang of scissors cutting through cotton, it was all she had left of the life before. Marie had always prided herself on being ordinary. She wasn't political, never thought much about the larger world beyond her sewing machine and the threads she knotted together. In many ways, she was like the thousands of others who quietly toiled under the weight of occupation. There was nothing special about her, and that was the point. She blended into the background, an anonymous figure moving through the streets of Paris with a careful, almost mechanical grace. But the quiet hum of her sewing machine was only masking the chaos that gripped the city. Marie could hear the whispers in the streets. The French resistance was growing, its operations becoming bolder, more urgent with each passing day. And in her small, unassuming shop, she began to notice things, strange things that didn't quite add up. The way people exchanged looks when they thought no one was watching. The brief glances passed under the table when she served her customers. A scrap of paper folded into a crease in a coat pocket. Small, imperceptible moments, but for someone paying attention, it was enough to know something was happening. Her first encounter with the resistance had come by accident, if there was such a thing as an accident in wartime. It had been late one evening, the shop nearly empty, when a man had entered. He was tall, with a rough edge to his appearance that suggested he didn't belong in the quiet streets of Paris. He hadn't come to buy anything, nor had he seemed interested in her work. Instead, he had simply asked, "Are you Marie?" At first, she had thought it was a mistake. Perhaps he was looking for someone else. But there had been something in the way he asked that made her freeze. A weight in his voice, a promise of something dangerous. "I need a favor," he continued, his eyes scanning the room, making sure they were alone. "You can say no. It's not for everyone." Marie's heart had begun to race. Her instinct was to say no, to send him away, but her curiosity got the better of her. "I'm not sure what you mean," she had replied, carefully setting down the fabric she had been working on. The man had leaned forward, speaking in a low voice. "We need someone who can move through the city unnoticed. Someone who can carry messages without drawing attention. People like you. People who are too ordinary to be remembered." Marie had looked at him, confusion flickering across her face. "I don't understand," she had said. The man's eyes had softened, and he had given her a small, almost sympathetic smile. "You don't need to. You just need to trust that the work is important. There are secrets in the city, secrets that can change everything." His words had echoed in her mind for days, and though the man had left without saying much more, she had sensed something deep within her stirring. He had offered her a chance, an impossible mission cloaked in danger, yet wrapped in an ordinary disguise. It wasn't a decision made lightly. At night, in the solitude of her small room, Marie had thought of her family, of her friends. She had imagined the future, one in which she continued to sew her life away, trapped in the hum of the machine, never knowing what could have been. But the more she thought about it, the more the question lingered in her mind. Could she live with herself if she did nothing? The decision came quietly, as decisions often do in the midst of war. The next time the man came to her shop, he had handed her a small, folded piece of paper, nothing more than a list of names and numbers. "Take this to the next safe house," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. "And remember, no one must know you're involved. No one must know your name." Marie nodded, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over her. She had known, in that moment, that her life would never be the same. The first time she carried the message, the world felt different. The streets of Paris, once so familiar, now felt alien, as if they were hiding something just beyond her line of sight. Every glance felt like a threat. Every turn held the possibility of an ambush. But she moved with purpose, blending in like the countless others who shuffled past the German soldiers, pretending to be ordinary. There was a strange power in being unnoticed. No one looked twice at the seamstress with a bundle of fabric under her arm. She was no one, just another face in the crowd, another worker in a city that had forgotten what freedom felt like. But that was exactly the point. In the eyes of the occupiers, Marie was invisible. No one would ever think to question the simple, ordinary woman carefully making her way through the city. She was just another cog in the machine, except now she was a part of a different kind of machine, one that was churning beneath the surface, quietly fighting back against the forces that had taken her home. With each new message, the burden grew heavier. But the work was too important. She knew this, and so, despite the fear that clung to her like a shadow, Marie carried on, day after day, becoming a silent part of something much larger than herself. But the longer she worked, the more questions began to creep in. The first time she had been stopped by a German officer, her heart had nearly stopped. The second time, she had learned to hide her fear. The third time, she had stopped being afraid. But with each close call, with each moment of nearly being discovered, Marie began to wonder just how long she could keep up the charade. How long could the world of the ordinary woman hide the extraordinary thing she was doing? The answer, it seemed, was not long enough. April 1942. Lyon, France. The journey to Lyon had been long, each mile a silent march through a landscape of fear. Marie could feel the weight of the secrets she carried, a burden heavier than any suitcase. The train ride had been filled with tension. Every clink of the tracks felt like a drumbeat, echoing through her chest. Her breath was shallow, careful. She stared at the window, watching the landscape blur into an endless stretch of farmland, the fields now tinged with the gray of occupation. It was in moments like these that Marie felt the vastness of the world around her, as if the war was too big to touch, too vast for one person to ever truly make a difference. But the truth was, Marie wasn't just carrying messages. She was carrying the hope of an entire movement, one that lived in the whispers of people she would never meet. Every word she passed along could change the course of the war, could alter the fate of countless lives. It was an impossible weight, but it was one she accepted with the same quiet courage she had carried all her life. When she arrived in Lyon, the city felt different, darker, more tense. The streets were crowded with German soldiers, their boots echoing off the cobblestones, their presence suffocating. It was in this city that she was told she would meet someone new, a contact who would take the message she carried and make it part of something larger. She didn't know who he was, didn't know what role he played in the resistance, but she didn't question it. In her world, questions could get you killed. Lyon was a city of shadows. The resistance was everywhere and nowhere. Its network a labyrinth of safe houses, hidden in plain sight, scattered throughout the city like buried treasure. Marie's instructions were simple. Find the old bookstore near the market square, slip inside, and wait for a man in a gray coat. She had been told to trust no one else, to never reveal her identity or the message she carried. As she made her way through the winding streets, every corner felt like it could be her last. The Nazi officers patrolling the area seemed to be watching her with a particular interest, their eyes lingering a moment too long, their faces unreadable. She moved quickly, head down, clutching the bundle of papers tightly against her chest. Every time she passed an officer, she felt a sharp pang of fear, her pulse quickening. But she had learned to hide it, to mask the anxiety that threatened to spill over. She wasn't just a seamstress anymore. She was part of something much larger, something that had no place for weakness or hesitation. The bookstore was small, tucked between a butcher shop and a cafe. It looked like any other antiquarian store, shelves stacked high with dusty volumes, the smell of old paper hanging in the air. But Marie knew better. She had been in enough of these places by now to recognize the subtle signs, the way the door creaked when it opened, the small bell that rang a little too loudly, the quick glance from the owner that let her know she wasn't alone. The world she was now a part was built on these tiny, hidden signals. Inside, she waited in silence, eyes scanning the rows of books as if she were just another customer. She felt like she was part of a larger game, one she had only just begun to understand. It was strange to think that she, someone who had always lived her life in the quiet corners of the world, was now part of a secret war, a war fought not with guns or tanks, but with words, with messages passed in dark corners of cafes and behind the covers of books. It was then that she saw him, the man in the gray coat. He walked into the store with a calm that was unsettling, as if he belonged there. He was older than Marie had imagined, his face weathered by years of hard work, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. He approached her without a word, his gaze flicking to the bundle she carried. Without a second glance, he led her to a back room, a small, dimly lit space with nothing but a desk and a few chairs. He closed the door behind them, his movements deliberate, measured. He gestured for her to sit, and without a word, she handed him the message. His hands were steady as he took it, but she noticed the briefest flicker of something in his eyes, a recognition, perhaps, of the risk involved in what they were doing. But he didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The weight of their shared silence spoke volumes. As he read the papers, Marie allowed herself a moment to breathe. She felt an odd sense of relief, knowing that this part of the journey was done. The message was out of her hands now, and that weight was gone at least for a while. But even as she allowed herself that brief moment of respite, something told her that the danger was only just beginning. When he was finished, the man folded the papers with careful precision and placed them in a drawer beneath the desk. He looked at Marie, his expression unreadable. "You've done well," he said, his voice low, "but it's not over yet. There's more to be done, and the risks are higher now." Marie nodded, the familiar tension returning to her chest. She had known it wouldn't be easy, but hearing it spoken aloud made the danger feel all the more real. There was no turning back now. The resistance needed her. The man's eyes softened slightly, though there was little warmth in his gaze. "You'll be safe here for tonight. Tomorrow, you'll head to the next location. But be careful. The city is crawling with Nazi officers now, and we're no longer invisible. They're watching everyone. And there are others, people who don't know what they're looking for, but they'll find you all the same." Marie didn't reply. She didn't need to. The fear was there, buried beneath the surface, but so was the resolve. She wasn't doing this for recognition or glory. She wasn't even sure why she had agreed to carry these messages in the first place. But now, as she sat in that small, dim room, the weight of it all settled into her bones. She had chosen a side, and there was no turning back. The man stood up and walked to the door. "Rest while you can," he said. "Tomorrow is another day." As Marie lay on the small cot that had been set up for her, her mind raced. She thought of the people she had left behind, the friends, the family, the life she once knew. She thought of her mother's face, her father's stern voice, telling her to stay out of trouble, to stay quiet. How far removed that world felt now. How strange it seemed that she, of all people, had become a part of something so dangerous, so vital. But as the hours passed and the city outside grew still, one thought kept repeating in her mind. It was too late to turn back. August 1944. Paris, France. The streets of Paris were changing. The air that had once been thick with the weight of occupation now hummed with a different kind of tension. A tension that crackled in the atmosphere like static, alive with the anticipation of something about to shift. The Allies were close. Everyone could feel it. The rumors swirled. The whispers grew louder. The Germans were losing. The war was nearing its end. And victory, freedom, was finally within reach. But for Marie, there was no grand celebration. No parade of medals or recognition. There was only the quiet hum of her sewing machine, the same rhythm that had kept her grounded through the darkest moments of the war. She sat at her desk, hands moving automatically through the fabric, stitching together the pieces of a life that no longer resembled the one she had left behind. The life she had fought for, in ways no one would ever know. The resistance was still active, though its movements had become more desperate. Marie had long since left behind her days of carrying messages, of running from German patrols and hiding in plain sight. The city was different now, but the shadows of the past still lingered. And so, she had returned to the quiet safety of her shop, a place that had been her refuge even in the darkest times. But now, as the war neared its end, Marie felt a strange emptiness settle into her chest. She had done her part, she told herself. She had delivered the messages, carried the secrets, faced the danger. But no one would ever know. She had never wanted recognition, never sought the limelight. But as the city outside erupted in celebration, as the streets filled with soldiers and civilians dancing in the streets, there was a gnawing emptiness in her gut. She had fought in the shadows, and now those who fought in the light would be celebrated. She would be forgotten. The war had not just stolen her freedom. It had taken something far more precious, her place in the story of its victory. Marie had never been a hero, at least not in the way the world now defined it. She wasn't one of the brave leaders or celebrated soldiers. She was just a seamstress, an ordinary woman who had done extraordinary things. And yet, no one would remember her name. The realization hit her slowly, like the final toll of a bell. The war was over, the Nazis had been driven out, and the people of Paris had their city back. But what the people like her? The ones who had carried the weight of resistance in the quiet corners, who had never asked for glory, but had given everything in silence? Were they to be erased from history, their sacrifices forgotten because they had never been part of the grand narrative? Marie walked through the streets of Paris. The crowds still gathered, their faces alight with joy, their voices a chorus of relief. Everywhere she looked, there were banners, flags, the symbols of victory. The world was celebrating, but there was no place for her in it. She had never been meant to stand in the spotlight. And yet, now that the war was over, she realized just how much she had longed for just a small piece of it. A whisper of acknowledgement, a single moment where the world could see her for what she had done. She wandered through the city, her steps slow, her mind racing with the same question over and over again. What now? What was the cost of a war fought in the shadows? What did it mean to give everything, to risk your life, only to find that you were forgotten by those you fought for? It was in the heart of Paris, just a few blocks from her shop, that she saw the posters. The photographs of the men and women who had been the face of the resistance, their names in bold print, their actions celebrated for all to see. Some of them were familiar, people she had met in the course of her work, people who had become part of the underground network, who had risked their lives alongside her. They were the ones who would be remembered, the heroes, the ones who had led from the front. And yet, Marie's name was nowhere to be found. No one would write her story. No one would ever know the full extent of what she had done, the risks she had taken, the countless nights she had spent in dark alleys, delivering messages, hiding in plain sight. The war had changed her, but had left her story untold.